The meeting between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping in Beijing today began with a humiliating rebuff to the Russian dictator. Vladimir Putin, for the fifth time since 2022, tried to convince Xi Jinping to finally agree to the new Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. And for this, Russian Gazprom once again lowered the gas price for the Chinese. But in Beijing, they decided that this was not enough, that this humiliation was still too little, so they once again refused Putin and demanded that the price of Russian gas be cut by at least a factor of 5. And they say, then we'll think about whether we need the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline or not. And against this background, it's very telling that residents of the Irkutsk region recorded a video message to the Chinese leader in which they asked Xi Jinping to build a school for them. And they say that in return, these Russians are ready to start learning Chinese. They say, please Xi, build us at least some kind of wooden school.
To address the chairman of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, with a proposal to fund the construction of our school as part of ethno-cultural diversity and the active development of cultural ties with China. Just like our country funds schools in Tajikistan, we are ready to start learning Chinese because we believe that we really need it. And the active development of cultural ties with China is the only possible path forward for us.
So, Vladimir Putin's visit to Beijing has officially started. The Kremlin announced the signing of 40 different documents, but the main document once again remained unsigned. Russian President Vladimir Putin tried for the fifth time since 2022 to convince Xi Jinping to finally agree on the new Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. The gas project, which Putin first proposed back in 2015 and which was planned to start construction 2 years ago. So it was once again included in Putin's agenda. For this, Putin brought with him to China the heads of Rosneft and Gazprom, Igor Sechin and Alexei Miller, as well as 5 deputy prime ministers and 8 ministers. They were expected to flatter the Chinese in every way and beg them to accept the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. The funniest thing is that every year when Vladimir Putin flies to Beijing, unwashed Russians are told that the project has already been agreed upon. After the last visit last year, Vladimir Putin announced that the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline with a design capacity of 50 billion cubic meters of gas per year had been agreed upon. A legally binding memorandum has been signed, and gas supplies to China will soon increase to 100 billion cubic meters per year. But in the end, the Chinese side never publicly confirmed the Russian president's statement. And a year has passed, nothing has changed. Despite ongoing talks for more than a decade, after 10 years of negotiations, Putin and Xi Jinping still haven't agreed on the main issue, the price of gas. The investment terms of the project and the start of gas delivery also remain unresolved. Earlier, China demanded that the gas price be lowered to the domestic Russian level, about $50 per 1,000 cubic meters, which is almost 10 times lower than European prices. And China says directly, listen, either you sell us gas for next to nothing, or get lost with your gas, because you won't be able to sell it to anyone else anyway. So why are you showing off over there? Who will you sell this gas to? Either you sell it to us for almost nothing, or leave. For over 10 years, Putin has tried to get Xi Jinping to agree to this project. And this year, Putin really wanted to use the topic of the war in the Middle East. The crisis around Iran and the closure of the Hormuz Strait have paralyzed 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas supplies. But the problem for Russia is that the new Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline is desperately needed by Russian Gazprom, which has lost the European gas market. And mind you, it is selling the lowest volumes abroad since the late 1980s. The lowest volumes, just think about it, in nearly 50 years. China does need this pipeline, of course, but it's not critical at all because they're willing to wait. And here's the main news of the day. Beijing has once again refused to approve construction of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline for the 11th time since 2015. It is reported that Gazprom offered an additional discount on its gas. However, the Chinese side stated that they still want to purchase gas at a price comparable to the level on the domestic Russian market. And here's the catch, and at the same time, China's clever strategy. Inside Russia, the price of gas is very low. It is heavily subsidized and is about $50 per 1,000 cubic meters. This is about 12 times lower, I emphasize, than the current European prices. and it's 5 times lower than the price China is paying now. Right now, China pays $258 per 1,000 cubic meters. And Putin says, great, we'll run another pipeline for you, buy some more. China says, no, let's do it for $50. And China says, I don't care. Go ahead, sell it. Sell us gas at a loss for $50 or don't sell it at all. And it's important to note here that China is also rapidly developing renewable energy and has large coal reserves. These two main sources of energy resources should be enough for China to regulate the supply for its economy, which is still steadily slowing down. And that means in the future, well, it might not need Russian gas in such large volumes. That's why Beijing doesn't want to sign long-term contracts for the new gas pipeline. Or they're willing to buy this gas, but only if it's really cheap so they can resell it. It's funny that Russians are now running around claiming there really is a breakthrough after all. Don't say everything is lost. No, there is a breakthrough. Against the backdrop of another rebuff to Vladimir Putin in China, Russian media started to recall that, hey, listen, back in March of this year, it became known that Beijing included, quote, preparatory work for the central route of the Russia-China gas pipeline in the current 5-year plan until 2030. Although the power of Siberia too is not mentioned directly in the document at all. On the other hand, it should be noted that this visit by Putin to China still brought some results. Russia now imports more than 90 technologies through China, the supply of which is prohibited by Western sanctions, whereas last year this figure was about 80%. On the other hand, last year trade between the two countries decreased by almost 7%, and Vladimir Putin is in a hurry to get assurances that China's interest in Russia has not disappeared and that this decline will not continue. And what is also important to note in order to understand the complete failure of Putin's policy, even if at some point Vladimir Putin manages to reach an agreement with Xi Jinping on power of Siberia too then, after the construction of this pipeline, after it reaches full capacity, and taking into account the current gas supplies, Russia will be able to export about 100 billion cubic meters of gas per year to China in its imagined wonderful future. That's the maximum, excluding prices. And that's, mind you, about 2/3 of what Russia used to sell to Europe before Putin launched the full-scale war against Ukraine. And that's not to mention that the supply prices to China are several times lower than they were on the European market. China demands a price that's 12 times lower. And not to mention that what I gave you wasn't an unrealistic scenario, just a hypothetical one. That's if Putin ever manages to reach an agreement with Xi Jinping on the power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. At the moment, this gas pipeline doesn't exist and apparently it won't be built anytime soon. That's Putin's policy for you. That's how Vladimir Putin outplayed everyone. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so by donating through the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.